Tim Wilson, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Now, on your victory in Goldstein, it was, of course, against the huge tide of defeat suffered by the Liberal Party. I wondered if Josh Frydenberg, your fellow loser from 2022, has been in touch to find out how you did it.
Well, Josh and I have had many conversations since the 2022 election and have continued to have those conversations since. But it's really a conversation that goes beyond two people and two candidates. It needs to be a conversation that's had by the Liberal Party more generally, because the challenge is not just isolated to Kooyong and Goldstein. It's actually about how we make sure we're a forward-looking, modern Liberal Party that meets the challenges of the 21st century and builds out the campaign infrastructure to make sure that we can win seats all over the country, and particularly in capital city seats, to make sure that we can represent all Australians.
Now, you said that going back to both to this campaign and the previous one, you said you racked up such big costs for your campaign on your credit card that you were terrified and couldn't sleep. And you also talked about getting psychological help after the loss in 2022. Do we dismiss too easily the pain and the strains of losing for politicians?
I don't think we dismiss it, but I don't think people talk very openly about it. I have no issue talking about the realities of what happens when you hold an office like I have. You lose it, and of course your identity in the public sphere is infused with that office. And when you lose it, you lose a certain place within society. And it's not about standing, it's actually about how you see yourself or how others see you and how you grapple with that. So I went and saw a psychologist, and I think it's really healthy, particularly now where I am, to talk about that, because I'm sure it's no different in other professional spheres. So politics takes a huge toll. It's a huge risk, and of course, if you're unsuccessful, you have to wear that. But it's also good sometimes for people who've gone through that to talk about it, so people understand and are perhaps a bit more empathetic, as I am to the former member for Goldstein, about the situation she's now facing.
Now, in your published statement today, you said, "I was elected to lead from the front or the back." How do you lead from the back? What does that mean?
Well, all I've said is since the election, when I was elected to lead, it was to define debates and to make sure that we drive conversations. And I don't mind whether it's from the back bench or from the front bench. Obviously, I'm on the front bench at the moment, to make sure that we're driving conversations that will define the future of Australia. I look at the challenges within my own portfolio. I'm not the minister, but that doesn't change the fact that Australia faces big challenges around the role of artificial intelligence and the future of work, what that's going to mean for making sure the next generation of Australians go on and have pathways into good jobs, and then being able to pay or to save and be able to do things like buy their own home. These are big conversations this country needs to have, and I plan to lean in them very strongly, because that's the basis in which we're going to have future national success.
Just one more question about you. Also in your statement today, you thanked your husband, saying that he held your hand walking through what I referred to earlier, the valley of political death from darkness to light. What did you learn about yourself during that darkness?
Well, I think you have to reflect on not just the experience you've had, but also there's an opportunity for growth. While I don't seek to dismiss any responsibility that I had about the 2022 loss, I wasn't the predominant factor or the driving factor for the loss. But it didn't mean there weren't things that I needed to learn and grow from that experience. And I'm very honest about that. And part of that's what we built into our campaign, but also how I approach politics, and the need to build out a pathway in the political conversation, which made sure it brought as many people along with us on the journey, because the focus of being a Member of Parliament has to be how we seek to achieve great things together as a country, and people are looking for a sense of hope and aspiration about where we're going.
All right, let's talk about one of these specifics. You've taken up the fight against the government's proposed increase in tax on large superannuation balances. Now, super wasn't created to be a low-tax environment for the very wealthy. Why not reform it?
The conversation isn't really about the tax rate. The issue is really about the unrealised capital gains issue. That's where people have a really big problem, because what it's going to do is stifle investment in the future of Australia, and we already have people talking and actively mobilising their capital and sending it overseas to to avoid the impact of this tax. It's going to be hugely administratively problematic. But more importantly, once the government has designed the administration of this tax on superannuation, there is nothing to stop them moving them across to businesses, to trusts and to other asset classes.
Why don't we stay with what's actually on the table here? And I just want to come back to the principle for a moment, Tim Wilson, if I could. This proposed change would affect 0.5% of super account holders. That's about 80,000 people only. The Grattan Institute says the super tax breaks are inequitable and economically unsound. So why carry on protecting a system that is, according to Grattan, fundamentally inequitable?
But you're confusing the two issues. There's an issue around the tax rate and there's the design of the tax itself.
But so you accept that there should be reform to the system?
Well, what I've said is that we have to address the fundamental problem of the unrealised capital gains tax issue, which is the central thrust of the proposal that's before us right now. The reckless decision of this government to put forward a design of a tax which is going to force the assessment of the value of assets and create huge liquidity problems, create a situation where we can where people are literally going to move their assets offshore, and we're going to see a situation where it's going to stifle investment and growth in this country, and the future investment of in the future of this country is hugely damaging. Well, and it's the stubbornness of the government to engage in an honest...
Let's go to that. But I just want to get clear on this. Do you accept Grattan's point of view that the system as it stands is inequitable?
Well, we've obviously had a conversation about some of the problems with the system in the past. We're the ones who introduced the transfer balance cap, which applied a 15% rate on income around superannuation. But there is no basis in which we can support this current unrealised capital gains tax. A family savings tax is what it amounts to, and implement a tax which is going to fundamentally undermine people investing in the future of this country, undermine confidence in that investment, and undermine the future growth of the Australian economy.
Well, can you not look for a different way of protecting investments? Do something to fix the tax system and do something to secure particularly risky investments outside of super, which was not designed to be a vehicle for protecting long-term investments.
But the problem is that this is the pathway the current government is pursuing, and they are doggedly pursuing it, Sarah. So that is the path the government is choosing, and this is why it must be opposed, because it has such a negative impact on the future growth of the Australian economy, future jobs, and the future opportunity that all Australians can enjoy. That's why it's so important to stop. They're the ones doggedly pursuing it. That's why I'm fighting it so hard.
Let me just put one more figure to you. As things stand, this is according to Treasury, by 2060, 1/3 of all withdrawals from super will be via bequests. That is a very strong signal that the system as it was intended is not working. That is a system designed for people's retirement, not a vehicle, not a wealth accumulation vehicle. So are you prepared to attack that first?
Well, as we know, the government continues to increase the volume at which people contribute to superannuation year on year. They can't then use that as the basis. They argue that people are now accumulating too much super in the system. The problem we have with this tax right now is we have the introduction of a family savings tax on unrealised capital gains. It is going to stifle investment in the future of this country. It will have a negative impact on the growth and economic opportunity and the creation of jobs, and it will stop investment in the speculation of growth industries in this nation right now. And we know that once they design it, once the government has it established in administration, they will seek to move it across different asset classes. So even if it's only impacting a small number of people today, we know it will be applied across the economy in the future, and it's coming after other businesses, trusts, and other investment classes.
All right. Well, we'll have to continue this conversation. It's a complex topic, but I'm glad to have you back. Thank you very much indeed, Tim, for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you, Sarah.